Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of FSW Conversations, brought to you by Fashion Strategy Weekly, which looks to bring practical, strategic, and research-based insights to leaders in the fashion and luxury industries. I am Jessica Quillen, co-publisher of Fashion Strategy Weekly and co-founder of luxury strategy agency It's a Working Title. In this edition of FSW Conversations, I am talking to Marco Ruffa, the Chief Marketing Officer for Pinko, a passionate innovator with over 20 years committed to making the fashion and luxury industry inclusively advanced and digital. He has held executive positions in the IT sector, embracing the rise of digital businesses and MarTech, eventually transitioning into marketing leadership roles. First, thank you so much for taking the time today, Marco. I always love to ask people to start about talking about your early career in fashion and what drew you to the luxury segment in particular, and sort of how did you navigate the industry's challenges in those early years of your career?
First of all, thank you, Jessica, for having me. The reality is, I've always been a tech guy. So technology has always been my really early passion. 5 years old, I started learning English language in Italy, and it was very hard to find a school near my house because I wanted to understand whatever was needed to make a small computer run. I used to live in Prato, which is a very well-known district for fabrics and garment production. So everything around me was about fashion, production, supply chain, and whatever. At some time in my career, I decided to put technology at the service of the fashion industry. And from then on, I have always been trying to mix together those two things and try to make technology as near as possible to business in a sense. So not to have a very tech savvy approach, but to have more a business oriented approach to the use of technology.
No, I love that. And we're going to definitely dive deeper into sort of that relationship between technology and business, particularly for luxury, because I have opinions about that career wise. I'm just curious because you said you made the transition from IT into marketing. And I'm just curious in terms of, what have been the defining moments in your career? And I think, is there a particular achievement or experience that most shaped your perspective on branding and luxury, particularly as you've sort of, become more senior within your career?
Well, the transition happened because I started project for business to business at the beginning. It was something like 2003, 2004. And to be honest, fashion industry is one of the latest to embrace digitalization. And we all know about this. So I started this kind of project and said, okay, if I'm capable of producing a platform that can sell items in the business to business industry, disintermediating the company, the brand to the wholesale consumer, why don't we start the business direct to consumer using more or less the same approach and the same technology? So I started doing everything in the company, the logistics, the packaging, reverse logistics, returns, customer service, whatever, and started internally. I was working in Patrizia Pepe at the time, and I started the e-commerce internally. So you know that in 2007, 2008,
Oh, wow.
it was a really early stage for the luxury industry to have direct e-commerce. And I still remember professionals coming from back then was Facebook, now it's Meta, rather than Google, coming to visit me and say, okay, why did you spend money in advertising using all our facilities? And so it happened for me to be very tech savvy, very tech prepared to discuss all this kind of stuff. And being in a world surrounded by a lot of professionals that were dealing with marketing, but that didn't understand anything about the technology, all this digital advertising that was starting to boom. So I was gifted that the CEO of the time, he told me, okay, why don't you start doing the marketing for the whole company? It was, of course, a challenge because I had also to deal with traditional PR, traditional media, a lot of stuff. Yeah, for me, it was a good transition. I embraced it and then I gained a lot of additional experience. It was really the moment, to create something that was in the MarTech space that now it's a word, it's a thing, but back then it was something that was really in my mind. So on a hand, I was gifted, and on the other one, maybe I made the path and I was near there in the exact moment where everything was starting.
That's amazing. That's so exciting. I saw a stat yesterday that something like there used to be only 600 companies doing MarTech, and now there's something like 16,000, and the space is just so glutted now. What was it like making that transition from IT into marketing earlier in your career, but like really becoming an advocate for digital technology within the marketing space, especially so early on? Did you find yourself having to educate your peers, or how did you sort of navigate those challenges?
On a hand, you're right, it was about educating my peers. And on another hand, it was about trying to transition the way things are approached inside the companies. We love to use this kind of word, disruption, transformation. Every speech we hear word like that. But then when you are in the company, you have to face people that comes every day and they want to do the work they're paid to do. And they want a clear goal. They want clear processes, clear activities. So it's not so easy to explain, okay, guys, from now on, we're going to start something totally different. So you have to be some kind of advocate, and you were right. And what I strongly believe is that you have to be a leader. So if they see that something is possible, maybe they want to make the transition themselves. That's the way I decided to lead. So the first one to make some kind of RDV campaign on what is now Meta RDV panel. It was me, and the same with Google, and the same dealing with CEO, and the same was dealing with a lot of technical stuff that was in between marketing and tech. So I believe that during this time, it was the only way I could transition me and all the team around me to embrace this kind of revolution.
One of the things I love so much about your post on LinkedIn, you take such a practical approach to sort of that place where technology and marketing come together. And I think really are sort of very clear in terms of things needing to be sort of grounded in not only solid strategy, but something that's appropriate for the brand and not just sort of what's on trend. And we'll get to on trend things and technology in a minute. But just diving a little deeper into your approach to marketing, because this digital first mindset is something that gets a lot of buzzwords, but I think for marketing in particular is something that I'm sure has evolved through the years. How has your marketing approach kind of evolved over the years, both kind of with technology, but also as you yourself have grown as a professional?
I think that in this time, things have changed because we have data. What was lacking back then, it's the bunch of information we have right now and we gather from all of the stuff internally in the company and outside the company. So there are tons of information at the moment, and data is really, I don't want to say the oil of AI or whatever, because it's something that's being too much abused. But the fact is that the concentration that a marketing professional should have right now for me is to leverage those data, those information in order to assess which is the real target of what they're going to sell, or which are the micro moments they have in their life in order to reach only using the right media. Because if something we're not missing is the opportunity of having creativity, the opportunity of having different touch points. The hard fact right now in 2024 is, okay, how do I choose among all of these huge amount of opportunities? Now we have digital outdoor, we can follow up people, we have the mobile that it is a thing. So the fact is leverage information and try to understand and be laser focused on your target. Otherwise, you're going to waste money and maybe you're not providing the brand or the company what is needed for a really successful marketing activity.
I'm going to press you here on that one because part of the issue, as you know, because I'm a content strategist, so I have lots of opinions on where content meets data. And one of the challenges we find with a lot of our luxury brand clients is simply that there's so much data all over the place. And I think because there are so many different sources of customer data, it can sometimes be hard to know where to place focus and how to really use it and apply it in a strategic manner, especially for content when content channels are managed by multiple teams and there's no central place to put that forward. And it's always this balance between brand goals for what they want to put out there creatively for that content vision versus, kind of the latest trending thing online from customers, whether it's a channel or a trending topic on TikTok. So how do you be content first and data first from your angle and strike that balance?
No, you're right. My view was more about, okay, how do I target my consumer? How do I shape my consumer? How do I understand their habits and behavior and whatever. So data there in this space is very clear and it's a basis for marketing strategies. But then if we go into content, you're right, it's another jungle. So going through this jungle is very hard. It's a mix because you have to reverse engineering those trends. Okay. That's more or less my approach. So why people are using YouTube? I don't know, because young generation, my son is one of them. So why are they behaving like this? No. So there was a time when we were talking about metaverse and I tried to reverse engineering what metaverse was about, and it was about connection. I explained in a lot of speaking occasion I had that looking to my son, he was hanging out with friends, I don't know, in the center of the city or whatever. And then he was back home and saying, okay, I'm going to stay some more hours with my friends. But he was alone in front of a PlayStation or in front of a computer or in front of something else with a headphones on, just talking about what happened when they were together in the real life. So the fact about metaverse was reverse engineering, staying in touch, staying in contact, extend the community maybe with people somewhere else in the world. It's just an example, of course, but it's the same thing we need to do when we see to TikTok trends rather than YouTube trends or whatever. I mean, it's not just because ASMR video have a lot of views. You just need to do ASMR. You have to understand why people is there, why they're consuming this kind of content with greed to stay there and scroll one to the other. So if you get this, maybe you have a strategy to put your brand in.
Oh, I love that. And you're making the argument for content strategy for me, so I appreciate that. But I think for luxury in particular, it has a bit of a challenge in sort of today's content marketplace because it has a different sort of audience, right? I mean, it has to position itself in a particular way to sort of reach those elevated consumers and kind of maintain that sort of positioning there. And yet they're still under pressure like every other brand today to stay on trend and stay relevant. And I'm just curious in your end, sort of, as a luxury brand, how do you maintain that balance between staying relevant, making sure you're still part of the conversation, but staying true to your brand values? I think answering that why is part of that, but I feel still there's a tension there to answer. And I'm just curious from your end, sort of how you find that balance, particularly in your work now at Pinko.
Well, now the fact is, every time you approach a new kind of conversation with people, it could be a community, could be a multitude of people all around the world that maybe on a specific trend or on a specific content they are discussing. You have to try to understand and touch the roots of your brand in some way. So when you go back and touch the roots, if those roots still speak something that is relevant to a specific topic you're targeting, then you have a line that could be applied. Otherwise, if you have to force and create something else, something that is maybe side to your brand's roots, I don't believe it's going to work because it doesn't resonate. So that's more or less how we handle this. So every time we have brainstorming or we have a lot of options on the table, and then we stop and say, hey, is this something that is still connected to our roots, to our brand foundation in a way? Yes, no, and how? And we deep dive, investigate this before taking any decision to start the approach to new channels or to new topic or new trends.
And just to dive a little bit deeper, I would love for you just to talk about your current vision for Pinko and what strategies you're focusing on to position the brand for today, but also for the future.
Pinko, it's all about female world. We have an opportunity to sell garments, accessories, shoes, bags, whatever. The challenges right now and in the future are, of course, to mix different generation, because different generation is my belief that they have very different culture. They have very different education. It's just like, okay, having the mobile first and the digitization, I think, to millennials rather than to Gen Z. We can only observe now all the things we said theoretically, now they are real. It's easy to feel the shift when you speak to a specific generation to the other, okay? It was not the same before. because everything was in a gray area, maybe, and you could state something that could stay both on the old generation, the new generation. Now, where things are moving on, you have a hard cut that separates one to the other. So the fact is that we need to craft different messages to hit different consumers. We need to assess personalization that goes on clusters, of course, and maybe we will go through hyper personalization, which is hard because we should need a bunch of tech to be hyper personalized to each of the consumer. Of course, it's the goal of any marketer to have a segment of one. Of course, no one is doing this, maybe not even Amazon, that is proposing me a lot of things to buy, but I don't need it. So maybe they're not getting me. But in some way, that's the process. And of course, with the advent of new technologies like AI, it will become something that could be affordable by brands. So at the moment, the vision is try to make different clusters, different segmentation, and try to hit them with a specific messaging, specific content in order to bring them on brand. And in the future, it will be going toward hyper personalization for sure.
And actually, just to dive a little bit deeper than that, I'm just curious for your take on sort of how technology right now and kind of the tools you use enable you to sort of, I guess, segment your audiences as you need to, but also reach consumers where they are. I think you get a lot of hype around AI, which I'll get to in a minute, but I'm just curious from your end, what technologies are really helping you communicate with customers in the right way, but also for your team, measure and adjust as you go along.
Well, 50 years ago, it was all about a multi-brand store that was in the city, having a few customers and knowing them one by one. So maybe when they were purchasing items, they already knew which was the customer to propose this item to. Okay, so it was like a one-to-one relationship made by human. So now that we have globalization, we have a lot of consumer coming to our stores, the numbers boomed, so it cannot anymore rely to human brain because we have limits, of course. So technology should be the thing that help reach the same goal so that we don't have to create a new way of having a relationship with our consumer. We have to bring what was working before to a new scale. That's my approach to technology. Otherwise, maybe we're going to do something that is far away from the needs of our consumer. So in order to do this, of course, AI is a thing. We're using a lot AI. For example, in CRM, we use AI to make what I love to call customer intelligence, So making all the data from CRM come together and let us understand if we have different buyer personas, different market basket analysis target that can be reached. I don't know, with a campaign, it could be by email, WhatsApp, Telegram, whatever. It's just making it the same thing that was sold in the old-fashioned way at a scale. So that's it. We have still to keep in mind every time we project a new campaign, and we try to focus on the use of some kind of technology.
One thing I love about that is that you're taking a customer first approach, which I think when it comes to content, as you know, is what I feel is very important for the future of luxury content as well. I mean, it's not to say that the brand vision doesn't matter, but customers are the one consuming it in the first place. And I think that's really critical. Okay, so to my question, as you know, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, noted at their Dreamforce conference that AI is overhyped. He came out and blamed Microsoft for the oversaturation of generative AI, and I believe compared Copilot to Clippy from the 90s. So I would just love for you to talk about your take on what he said, but also just to dive a little bit deeper into your take on sort of AI for today's business landscape. Do you think AI is overhyped, and how important will AI specifically be for the business of luxury in particular moving forward?
A lot of things to analyze, no? First of all, I think that many made this kind of statement because integrating AI into their product is hard. That's a fact. They launched something like AI-powered copilots more than a year ago, and now we don't have them in general availability. So maybe it was harder than projected to go over a demo. Okay, a demo is okay, a video is okay, but when you want to make it a product that works in the scale they have, maybe it's not just that easy. Okay, we all have PowerPoint, Word, Excel, whatever, Teams. But okay, how may I make those products evolve? There's AI, so I put AI inside. So maybe they did this in a too fast way without really trying to craft the way AI is entering into the process. And that's more or less the same fact that a lot of companies are doing. So it's not about my vision about AI. It's not just about, okay, I have AI and I use when I want. It's about rethinking processes in a totally different way so that AI is a concrete part, is a concrete step that you pass through into the process. And it could be an acceleration of the complete process, or it could be an empowerment of the reasoning you're doing inside the process. But you have to write down the process and try to understand where to use this kind of tool. Otherwise, it's just something that maybe I'm using OpenAI, ChatGPT. I read a lot of interviews to executives all around the world, and all of them slow down on the investment on AI because, of course, the buzzword is AI, but most of them is referring to generative AI. So we have to make a split. AI, algorithmic forecasting, predictions, whatever, are in the companies at the scale from years to now. Okay. But generative AI is something totally different, and LLMs are something totally different. And my personal belief is that this new kind of technology, this new approach to artificial intelligence, is something that is going really to revolutionize everything. I don't really believe that the models about creativity, when we work to images, films, all the time I see something that was kind of weird. So I really understand, okay, it's about AI, and they lack this kind of sparkle that comes from our brain, our soul, the mixture of, I mean, being here as a human. But when you have just some kind of approach to data, to raw data, so like a language, I pick a language, I create a course, and I put you through a process to learn this kind of language. I mean, there's no creativity needed in a way. So that's where it's going to revolutionize a lot of things.
And I mean, look, I have a PhD in 19th century British poetry, so I have a lot of kind of opinions coming in about just AI for content, everything. But I really like the specificity that you're bringing to the equation and talking about this and having a why for AI and kind of these purposeful applications. And I think, look, I'll be the first person to agree with you that I think using AI to automate processes that we don't want to do, like those lower level processes, has a lot of value. And I think for even things in the world of content production, those sort of lower level tasks, I think, and things like that, it can very much sort of speed up sort of, everything from ideation all the way through like project management. Where I do take issue with it, and I'm curious for your opinion, just to dive a little bit deeper into that space between sort of the humanistic side of things and sort of that creative notion of AI, a lot of brands are taking advantage of this sort of pool of tools that have flooded the market that are essentially just Chat GPT with a wrapper on it that's saying we can now just automate all your content for you and we're going to put it out there on social media. And you see this just sort of flood of really bad content. And the line that everybody, including myself, always uses is that it's garbage in and garbage out. I mean, as you know, things like RAG models for AI content don't really work unless your content is structured, and you can't implement structured content models for AI until you clean your content and have removed duplications, and you essentially have a single source of truth for content on that side. But on the humanistic side, I'm just curious for you, where do you sort of see the future of these sort of AI tools? I mean, do you think all writers are going to be replaced with robots, or what do you sort of see as the future of AI and content specifically? Particularly, I think, through the lens of luxury marketing, because it worries me that we're just going to end up with luxury brands replacing all of their editorial staff with AI, and it's going to like lose its soul. So I'm just curious what you think.
No, I don't think it's going to happen. I made a lot of posts about garbage production, digital garbage, because if we start right now to make content being produced just by AI, in the future, of course, this is going to fade away, that sparkle that I was talking about before. And the sense of what we're going to read is going to be really totally distant from what we expect. I think the word is even wrong, artificial intelligence. It's not intelligence, it's just putting the right relationship within words. That, of course, is a basis. We need to investigate about this. I'm very fascinated about the fact that language is a sort of expression of something that is happening inside our brains and is very similar to our process of thinking and expressing our thoughts one to each other through the language. So maybe we have to investigate more on this, why language is so near, why if we work on language, I think that the surprise that at OpenAI they had when they started ChatGPT, I don't think, to answer your question, that all brands are going to replace with bots content creation stuff or text creation stuff or description copywriters for e-commerce or whatever, because it's going to make brand lose their authenticity. And being a brand is all about authenticity. So if I just think to shop because I have a specific occasion, it could be a sport one, it could be a fashion one, it could be I have to go to a wedding or whatever. If it's just like this, I mean, why should I differentiate buying Pinko rather than buying another brand? No, just to make an example. While if I'm still trying to put my core brand value inside the content I create, then something different that maybe is inside the soul is going to move and it's going to bring you near a brand rather than to another one. So authenticity will be a thing. It cannot be replaced by bots. That's my view. But in the end, I want to say I started writing a book. I don't know if I'm going to make it because I had an intuition about a fact and I have to work with a copywriter, a ghostwriter, maybe that will help me make it more clear as a vision. It's about a digital soul because everyone in the future, for me, will have a digital soul. It is something like an entity that will help us interconnect each other, work better, have more proficiency in the family, in work, in all this stuff we're doing in life.
I think that's such a fascinating concept. I mean, look, I've had as much fun playing with ChatGPT as anyone else. And actually, it's fantastic at making travel itineraries and actually organizing your child's schedule. But this idea of a digital soul is interesting, right? Because you're putting sort of the spiritual construct of sort of the human imagination and even some of that sort of intangibleness of emotion and that sort of affective brain that we have into sort of a digital place. And I'm just curious, do you see that sort of being like an avatar type of thing in your vision? How does that sort of live within a digital ecosystem?
So my vision, and that's why I started writing a book, because I think it could be an interesting point at this moment of our evolution as human being, is something that is more spiritual, really. It's something that is like a mirror of us somewhere else, maybe in the digital world, in a matrix or something. We have plenty of science fiction to imagine it, but it's something that in the end, and I'm totally fan of data. Imagine it's going to have images, videos, recordings like the one we are doing right now. So it's going to know everything about us, maybe better than we know ourselves. We're going to seize our existence as a physical thing. This kind of digital soul is not going to live together, but it's going to be absorbed into something that is the one. Okay. So it's like leaving our mark in the future into something that is digital. And if you think about this, we are leaving a digital footprint. Whatever we do, it's still something that is not so clear. Maybe it's not so clear because it's happening.
I don't know if you've read Foundation. I'm just getting very Asimov tones about this whole thing, this whole nature of this digital presence moving from beyond. But that's fascinating. So we look forward to reading the book when it comes out. I guess that's my other question about AI, is just in terms of the dividing line between what's personal and private and what's public and global. Even with your digital soul, like, how do you keep that away from everybody else? Or is it just part of a collective?
Interesting question. No. At the moment, I was having lunch before starting this interview, and I said to a colleague of mine, For me, privacy is a bullshit. Maybe somebody's writing me an email and they have a lot of information about me. And a lot of time in the working habits, I speak with people and say, no, we don't use AI because we want to keep secrets inside the company, and say, hey, pay attention that maybe ChatGPT knows more things about your company than you do. And we make challenges, and sometimes I'm right. So maybe they don't have the latest sketch of Ferrari, or they don't have the latest creation of Alessandro Michele in fashion, but it's like this. It's really hard to prevent information to be absorbed by artificial intelligence. So privacy is going to become a different thing. And we had a lot of conversation in the past years about Web3. And I think that this kind of evolution of what we all understand is web, it's something that we should investigate and invest more as humanity. Maybe European Union or US, they should invest a lot of money in this to make the web evolve to Web3, so we can mark and differentiate what's private and what's public, okay? With a market that says, okay, this is my information, so I can decide I want to share or I don't want to share. I know it's another headache. We're going into a tunnel of lot of headache in this discussion, but I believe that there's no solution. Otherwise, how are you pretended to stop this kind of thing to happen? Are you making a lawsuit to OpenAI every day? I mean, it's not going to work like this.
Just to bring it back to luxury, I just came off a few days at a creative tech conference in New York, and obviously AI was part of that discussion. But, I always try to bring it back to kind of where we are now. And I'm just curious for like luxury is going through a thing right now. Obviously, there's a big challenge on the market economically happening. And I think brands are sort of struggling to figure out what to do next when it comes to digital, both because of changing consumer landscape, both from the economy, but also I think the collapse of Farfetch and Matches kind of spooked a lot of people on sort of what they should be doing now for e-com. So I'm just curious from your perspective, both as a marketer and a technologist, what do you see as sort of the most pressing challenges for luxury brands kind of digitally today? And what should they be doing now to stay relevant and kind of move forward in this landscape?
I think we are in the moment of something like a hangover of luxury habits. So buying just for the sake of buying, leaving digital footprint, leaving carbon footprint, leaving a lot of things. I mean, it's kind of habit we have to change because we're forced to change. Okay. And it's something that is happening. We don't understand, but it's something in the zeitgeist, and it's involving all of the people together, all of the communities. Because if we start trying to do a strategy and say, okay, hey, now we have sustainability is a thing because all the wardrobe are already full. We cannot still keep selling and selling and selling and create new things using resources. Maybe we have to go to second hand. Maybe we have to go to recycle, upcycle, or whatever. Okay. And then we have China is slowing it down in consumerism. And then we have new brands coming from China pretending to have heritage, even if they don't have heritage, but they sell like they have heritage. And then we have 2-3 wars happening in the world. We have election in US. We have too many things happening together. But the fact is that fashion itself, it's about costume, and costume represents, in a way, something that is happening in the streets. So I think all of those luxury brands needs to stop, halt, and read again what the society is on. So I believe that after this, a lot of new strategies will arise. Maybe they are going to look different, but will be successful again. There's a part of my belief that maybe we have to rearrange numbers on a different level, because we all know that resale models like Vinted, eBay, Vestiaire Collective, it's kind of enemy to the luxury industry, yes or no? Because the luxury brand cannot control how things are going in the second-hand market, and maybe they are not selling new products. So when they saw new products that were slowing down as demand, they halted price, putting them higher and higher and higher without going downturn in the global sales turnover. Okay. But now it's no more possible. I mean, it's ended. It's something that needs to stop and to be reassessed globally with new ideas. So, which are those ideas? It's too early to be sure that they're going to take place. And we are also at the end of something like 2 decades, 3 decades. We had the Twin Towers crisis, and the luxury is still going up. We had Lehman Brothers, we had the Euro crisis in 2012, we had COVID. Every time, a lot of problems all around the world were still actually booming, booming, booming. Okay, now we're seeing some kind of downturn. I mean, okay, let's take some breath.
On luxury brands kind of owning resale themselves for their own goods. I mean, where do you see that as a strategy moving forward?
It's very interesting. I mean, Patagonia is the first one. It's not luxury, but they opened the way of sustainability for all of the brands out there. So they started reselling used items. They had also an advertising campaign say, you don't need to buy this jacket. You don't need to buy this sweatshirt. No, it was really interesting. And I say, hey, wow, they're passing by a message. And again, it was about their roots and their willingness to have a dialogue with consumer. And it was very, very successful. But yes, trying to make people bring their old stuff into a store, refresh. I don't know, it's a bag from Louis Vuitton. You refresh the bag and you sell again. It makes a lot of visits inside the store. So since we are shifting toward experience, not just marketing, but experience buying, because people is willing to spend now more on experience rather than on goods. If you craft an experience while your old consumer is coming back and bringing a used bag, or it's coming someone to buy a used bag because they want to grab one which has maybe a lower price, or maybe it's just because it's a content of sustainability, then you're having 2 visits. And those 2 visits you can leverage to sell something. So it could be a thing. Of course, luxury brands, they want to have the full control of everything from the beginning to the end. So they're not willing to sell something they cannot really guarantee it provides you that emotional trust, that emotional transportation, no? They're willing to create when you buy something from that. So that's a real challenge, but it could be an interesting business model to develop. Why not?
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. I do have to ask you one final question because, as you know, I'm a marathoner and I know you're a cyclist. So I would just love, as a parting thought, to talk about your love for cycling and kind of how that keeps you in balance.
Well, as a professional, I use cycling as my medication. I don't think I will ever find a way to stop myself, make myself meditate or having yoga.
So thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for another great discussion as part of FSW Conversations. For deeper analysis and insights, please visit Fashion Strategy Weekly at fashionstrategyweekly.com, a media publication of Strategy Agency, It's a Working Title. For questions, comments, and concerns, please reach out to our media team at info@itsworkingtitle.com. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcasting platforms.